How can I get diagnosed with ADHD? I really feel like I do have it. I connect with everything I read about it. Why does my brain disassociate, drift off, and start thinking of unrelated things when I'm in the middle of doing something that is normally stimulating? I would like to know if ADHD becomes more calm as you become older. That's a really good question. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Sorry I Missed This, the show where we talk about ADHD and all things sex, intimacy, relationships, and communication. It's me, your host, Cate Osborne, and today we are doing a solo episode. I'm all by my lonesome today because we are doing a mailbag episode. You may not know this, but I have my very own email at Understood. It is sorryimissthis@understood.org, and every so often we get questions, and I get a lot of DMs and a lot of questions in my real life, and so my mailbag tends to stack up. And so I thought it would be fun to randomly choose some of those emails and messages and answer folks' question here in a mailbag episode on Sorry I Missed This. To help me out, I have my trusty D20. If you've ever played Dungeons & Dragons, this is the dice that runs it all. If you've never played Dungeons & Dragons, D20 is a dice that is numbered 1 to 20. I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to count down the little unemailed answer list. Please don't judge me for having so many unanswered emails. And we will see what questions our dear listeners have. All right, so the first number that we have is lucky number 11. This question comes from Scone. Why does my brain disassociate, drift off, and start thinking of unrelated things when I'm in the middle of doing something that is normally stimulating? That is a really interesting question, and the answer is honestly pretty simple. The way that our ADHD brains synthesize and absorb information, sometimes stimulating activities become routine. Even if you are doing something that you really love and you really enjoy up to, and yes, including intimacy, sometimes it can get repetitive. It can get a little bit boring, and our brains are always seeking out a little bit of novelty. And so it can be easy to start thinking about other things, or, hey, what if I won the lottery? Or, hey, what if I ran for governor? I don't know. I think a lot about heists and what would happen if I became president, which I don't think anybody wants. But that's basically what it is. It's really your brain is just constantly cooking up there. Your brain is constantly working on stuff. And scientifically, I'm sure that there's a much better and more interesting explanation, but it's your brain is just looking for something to do. And sometimes even when you're having a good time during the activity, it's not enough to keep your ADHD entertained. So you just start thinking about other stuff. And then you go, oh, I'm not paying attention to the thing that I was doing. And you got to bring it back around. And that is one of the weird and strange things about living with ADHD. It doesn't matter how entertaining or how stimulated you are. Sometimes you're just going to check out and start wondering about like grilled cheese sandwiches or something. Okay, No, I don't know. I'm going to say that's a 9 and not a 6. How can I get diagnosed with ADHD? I go to a Free Baptist clinic and they neither diagnose nor treat ADHD. I really feel like I do have it. I connect with everything I read about it. Also, I have heart failure. Wow. So I'm pretty sure that I can't use any of the standard ADHD meds since they're usually stimulates. So I wonder what I can use if I get the diagnosis. That is a great question. And first off, dear listener, I'm so sorry that you're dealing with heart failure. That is very scary, and I hope you're doing okay. But the real truth is that an ADHD diagnosis provides nothing but information. The story that I always tell is that I walked into getting my ADHD diagnosis the same person as I was walking out of my ADHD diagnosis, except now I knew what to Google, basically. And if you feel like an ADHD diagnosis is something that you want to pursue, there is no rule that says that you have to pursue medication. Medication is an incredibly valuable tool for a lot of people with ADHD, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right for everyone. Also, there are different types of ADHD medications. There are different things that you can try and explore. But the thing that I always say is, even if you aren't sure about getting an ADHD diagnosis, even if you're not sure that you fulfill all of the qualities that you would need to walk out the door with a diagnosis, there's no rule that says that you can't use ADHD tips and tricks and tools and suggestions and systems to support you throughout the day. Everybody forgets stuff sometimes. Everybody, struggles with organization a little bit. Everybody has a little bit of executive dysfunction, and the amount to which you do is really kind of dependent on your ADHD diagnosis. But you're allowed to use organizational systems that are geared towards people with ADHD. And so if you aren't sure about getting the diagnosis, if you're not sure what the diagnosis would provide, For some people, it's clarity. For some people, it's confirmation. For me, it was really meaningful in terms of helping me realize that I wasn't broken and that I wasn't a screw up. And there was a reason around the things that I had been struggling with. For other people, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that life-changing. They just go, oh, okay. And they move on with your day. So ADHD diagnosis is a personal choice. It is a choice that involves a lot of, I think, introspection and even asking yourself what the diagnosis will provide for you. But you're not taking away anything from anyone if you use ADHD strategies in order to manage your life, even if you don't have ADHD. Okay, 15. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I like this question. What are some tips for maintaining self-kindness when coming out of depression and being surrounded by problems of my own creation? That's a really good question. And that's honestly something that I struggle with as well. Literally, last week, I made a video about this earlier, but I did that very classic ADHD thing where I very responsibly packed my depression medication, took it with me to the conference where I was speaking, took it every day. It was great. Came home and was avoiding unpacking my suitcase. And so I just frankly forgot that my antidepressants existed for almost a week. And so I found myself in a downward depression spiral that was absolutely of my own making. And I was really frustrated. I was really angry with myself. And I was like, how could I be so stupid? How could I be so dumb? I can't believe that I just kept forgetting to take my meds out of my suitcase. And so I really had to take a step back. And I think in answering a question like this, I think it's also really easy to sound a little bit trite or a little bit insincere, but I really do mean it when I say that you have to give yourself intentional grace. You have to give yourself intentional patience. Even the phrasing in this email, problems of my own creation. Like, yes, I am the reason why I forgot to unpack my medication, but the forgetting, the out of sight, out of mind, the executive dysfunction, the overwhelm of the thought of having to unpack my suitcase and all of the tasks that are related, all of that is related to my executive functioning and my ADHD. And so, yes, I think legally on paper, you could say that was a problem of my own creation, but it is also a problem that is directly related to my disability, to your disability, to ADHD. For me, one of the best things that I think I've been able to do in terms of pursuing self-kindness is to just take a moment when I feel that frustration coming up, when I feel that anger, that self-hatred, that even resentment towards my sometimes lack of ADHD coping mechanisms, or I wish that I had better skills, but, I've only gotten my diagnosis recently, those kind of things. When I find those angry and negative emotions spiraling up, what really helps me is to focus on emotional regulation. And that's hard. It's really hard. It's especially hard work if it's a skill that you are learning or working on. It's even harder if you are a person who deals with something like alexithymia, where maybe you struggle to even know what you're feeling in your body and like what emotion is going on with you. And it's also connected, because if you think about you're coming out of a depression, maybe you've got mess, maybe you've got clutter, maybe you've got garbage and empty cups and empty dishes by your bed. That's a lot of tasks. That's a lot of steps. But those tasks and those steps aren't going to go away if you are being cruel to yourself. And I think sometimes I honestly trigger my own rejection sensitivity to a certain extent, in terms of really making myself feel like crap, instead of just saying, hey, you know what? I was in a depressive episode. That is a thing that happens to me sometimes. Again, I know that it sounds maybe like a really trite answer to be like, just be nicer to yourself. But I think just taking time, giving yourself time and introspection to figure out, maybe do a little detective work as well. Like, hey, if I get really frustrated because there's a bunch of empty cups next to my bed when I'm going through depression, can you put a bin there? Can you make just like one shortcut that makes your life 1 to 3% easier? And I do that a lot. I have, like a dishes bin in my office. I have garbage cans everywhere in my house. I keep cleaning supplies literally within arm's reach, because I know that if I make a mess and I'm already feeling crappy and I'm already feeling discouraged, it's going to be less easy for me to like get up and do the thing. So I try and keep stuff handy in order to keep myself clean and fed and watered. Honestly, dear listeners, I would love to know, this is your call to action for this episode. Email me, tell me what you do. Tell me how you handle this, because I think this is something that is really going to resonate with a lot of the women who listen to this show. All right, next question. Natty 1 in D&D, a 1 is a very bad roll, but it's okay. We'll go to the first email. My partner has a hard time with getting headaches when he gets a lot of tasks. He's on meds, but are there any tips to help his brain not get so overloaded? Break it down. I think that's my number one tip, is break it down, right? Especially if, the tasks are producing such a cognitive load that you're getting a headache or you're getting exhaustion or you're feeling a lot of overwhelm. Because overwhelm can manifest in our bodies in a lot of different ways. For some people, it feels like anxiety. For some people, it feels like depression. For some people, it feels like panic. For some people, it's, headaches, eye strain, that kind of thing. So I would say the first thing is you don't have to manage a lot of tasks at the same time if you don't want to. Is there a smaller component part of the task that you can do? Can you load in a few dishes in the dishwasher and then walk away, go do something else, take your dog for a walk, then come back, load a few more? I think we put a lot of expectations on ourselves based on how people without ADHD live. Of course, I should be able to load the dishwasher all at once. Of course, I should be able to vacuum the whole house. Of course, I should be able to clean my bedroom all in one go. But I really think that if you look at how ADHD symptomology works and how ADHD impacts our executive functioning, we are not built to do things in the same way as other people. And so for me, I tend to use a lot of lists when I'm cleaning. Actually, I have a list that I can show you. So I let a bunch of stuff build up in my hallway and it became sort of an obstacle course of trying to get into my office. And I was like, okay, this has gone on for long enough. I need to do something. But even starting that task, that was like a big deal for me. I put it off for months and months and months because it was so overwhelming. But so I made a list and my list looks like clear path. And I thought that's way too much. Like, what does that even mean? So I broke it down further and I said, bag up costumes because I keep a lot of costumes in my hallway. It's a long story. Collect trash, take giveaway stuff downstairs, bring bins into office, take boxes downstairs, add like with like. And then I divided those out even further, right? So Ren Fair costumes need to get sorted. Regular weird costumes need to get sorted. Props and costumes need to get sorted into separate categories. I break it down into minuscule tasks and then I give myself time. I give myself patience. I say, if all I get done today is making that list, at least I've got a list started. At least I've got this small part done. And then I look at the list and I say, okay, I might not be able to bag up all of the costumes, but I bet if I start grabbing costumes to put into a storage bag, let's see how much I get done before I start feeling that overwhelm. And I think being really honest with yourself about overwhelm and when that headache starts creeping in and when that panic and that anxiety and that depression and that, again, that feeling of like, oh, I'm so stupid and so dumb, I can't do anything right. That's your break time. That's your break moment. That's when you say, nope, I don't need to fight through this. Instead, I'm going to go pet my dog or touch some grass or play a video game or something. But then also the sort of, I think, converse side of that is also taking the accountability and the responsibility that you need to make sure that you then come back to that task. And that can be the really hard part. So the facilitation of that can also look like things like timers or, scheduling time on your calendar to make sure like, hey, today we're going to do all the trash or, hey, remember to take the bins down today or whatever. This is a weird rant to go into off of this question, but I'm in my feels today, so I'm just going to sort of take ownership of that. I think one of the hardest things for me as a person who talks about ADHD is that I can't tell you what to do. I literally can't. I can't tell you what is going to work for you. I can give you suggestions. I can tell you 100 different ways that 100 different people in 100 different places manage their time or their overwhelm or, even just the daily stuff like taking out the trash or the chores. But I cannot guarantee that any one of those 100 tasks are going to be right for you. So what I can tell you, what I can talk to you about, and the thing that I'm really passionate about is helping people build that self-awareness, building that curiosity, that sense of investigation of I'm going to be a detective about my own systems and structures and what is going to work for me. And so are there any tips to help get his brain not get so overloaded? Yeah, absolutely. There's probably thousands that might work. But where you have to start is where your partner has to start is with himself. Where is that overwhelm coming from? What does that overwhelm feel like? Does it feel like resentment? Does it feel like depression? Does it feel like a headache? Does it feel like, a panic attack? And moving forward from that point. Let's do another one. I would like to know if ADHD becomes more calm as you become older. For instance, if there is a high chance when you're younger that it is so disruptive, but as you grow older, 20s, 30s, 40s, does it mellow out? I also would like to know if effective treatments now are changing. Everything I know about this is that most children are given medicine that mellows them out or they become zombies. A lot of parents do not like giving their children medicine unless they're in class. I would like to know if there's another future treatment that is going to become available to help this. That is a great bunch of questions. And I think it's really interesting because I think there's a few misconceptions that we can break. There's a few stigmas that we can break and we can talk about. So let's dive into this question. The first part is, does your ADHD become calmer as you get older? One of the big focuses here on Sorry I Missed This and understood.org's misunderstood initiative is, ADHD in women and aging. And what we see is that for some women, their ADHD does tend to mellow out. For some people, their ADHD does get easier to manage as they get older, but we also see a lot of older women getting diagnosed with ADHD when they start menopause or perimenopause because the systems and structures that they had are breaking down because their ADHD symptoms are becoming more prevalent and affecting their life more. So I think the first thing that you really have to caveat with that question is that it kind of depends, and it kind of depends on the part of your life cycle that we are talking about, and it also depends, I think, very deeply person to person. However, this wonderful question asker did also highlight this, that there's a chance that when you're younger, it is disruptive, but as you grow older, does it mellow out? I think the way that I would answer that question is that ADHD is changeable, right? Like ADHD changes throughout our lives. And as we develop more skills, our ability to self-regulate, our ability to, self-observe, those kind of things. A lot of kids with ADHD who do start out being kind of, the very stereotypical like troublemakers in class. A lot of them do wind up being, really good students or not struggling as much because they've developed those tools. However, I also think that this is an important place to say that a lot of those tools and a lot of those supports are a privilege that not every kid has, especially if you're a kid with ADHD who doesn't have a diagnosis. You might not learn healthy coping mechanisms, or the coping mechanisms that you do learn might be really unhealthy. So it's a complex question because a lot of it has to do with not only the individual, but the supports. But the thing that I would say is that especially when I first started doing this work, there was this sort of notion that ADHD is a kid thing, and kids screw around in class and they misbehave and they're the class clown and they're loud and they're disruptive. And then, like a magical fairy comes on their 18th birthday and takes away the ADHD and they live the rest of their life as a functional adult. And it's just simply not true. Again, the way that ADHD manifests, the way that ADHD shows up, a lot of the hyperactivity, instead of being externalized, a lot of times that can turn internal. And again, that's where we see a lot of like those coping mechanisms come in, because when your hyperactivity is internalized, it can be really uncomfortable. And that can manifest as things like racing thoughts. It can manifest as things like impulsive decision making based on factors in your life. For instance, a lot of people with ADHD deal with, like I absolutely do, things like impulsive or compulsive spending, because the hyperactivity is still there and you need a place to put that energy. And so online shopping or gambling or things like that are a place where sometimes hyperactivity shows up. And those can be pain points. Those can be shame points. So I think that's maybe an answer to that question is ADHD is going to stick around. Most people don't, quote unquote, grow out of their ADHD. If anything, they learn how to manage it better, but that doesn't mean that you don't have ADHD anymore. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. You are born with it. You're going to have it forever. The extent to which it impacts and affects your life, individual to individual, which is annoying. I wish that there was just like one answer for every ADHD question, but there's not. The second part of this question is, are there future treatments coming up that are going to improve the way that we relate to medication? And the answer is certainly yes. I am definitely not a research scientist, but I can tell you that there have been some really exciting and really interesting studies that have started being produced. There's also new medications that are coming out where instead of taking them during the day, you take them at night. They help you sleep, and then they help you sort of function throughout the day, which I think is really cool and really interesting. Frankly, I would love to try that. And then I also kind of want to touch on this. Most children are given medicine that mellows them out or they become zombies. The truth is that medication is really stigmatized, and the way that we talk about medication is, I think, sometimes really polarizing and really damaging, because what we see is that when kids are properly medicated, when they are getting the dosage that they need, when they are taking a medication that is right for them, they thrive. We see it reduces the rates of addiction. It reduces the rates of substance use disorder. It reduces the rates of things like eating disorders and binge eating and gambling issues and even driving issues. Like a lot of teenagers with ADHD have issues with driving, and they tend to get in more driving accidents. But yeah, that notion of we're turning kids into zombies. If that is happening, something is going wrong. If kids are feeling like their creativity is stifled or they're not the person that they were before, that is a medication issue. Especially if your kid is a kid on medication, it is important to involve your kid in that discussion and talk to them about how they're feeling and do they like it and are they comfortable and are they struggling? Are they feeling all right about it? This idea of like parents don't like giving their kids medicine unless they're in class, that's also okay too. Like, I'll be perfectly honest, I don't take my ADHD medicine every day. Sometimes it's nice to give my brain a break. Sometimes it's nice to just sort of have the day off, especially if I'm not doing anything. But yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on with ADHD medication. I know Understood even has resources and stuff available regarding medication, so I encourage you to check those out. I'm not a doctor. I will be in a year, but not right now. So yeah, that is my very long-winded answer to that question. The end. Well, hey, dear listeners, that is all the time we have for today's mailbag. Thank you to everybody who has written in. We will be doing these again. So once again, if you want to email sorryimissedthis@understood.org, please feel free. We love hearing from you. We love knowing what you love about the show. And I don't know, maybe this is a little bit soapboxy. Maybe this is a little bit cheesy. I'm just going to go with the word cheesy because all my big expensive words have fallen out of my head. But I hope, dear listener, that in listening to these questions, you realize that there are so many people out there who are struggling with the same things. Every day, I get dozens and dozens of questions from people, and so many of them are around the same topics, all of the topics that we talked about in today's episode. And so I just want to encourage you that if you are feeling alone, if you are feeling discouraged, if you are feeling overwhelmed, please not only reach out, but also utilize the resources that are available to you. Understood.org has so many incredible education resources. The misunderstood community is growing and is becoming something really fabulous. And so if you are a person who is feeling that lack of community, but that strong sense of overwhelm, especially right now with everything going on, go check it out. I really hope to see you around in the community spots that we have built. But anyway, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. And I will see you next time on Sorry I Missed This.